So we are looking at Psalm 122, which is a song of ascent. And we've been looking at some songs of ascent already over the last couple of weeks. Psalm 122, a song of ascent of David. And I want to start by telling you a story of Alexandra, who is a Ukrainian refugee in the UK. And she lived formerly in Kiev in Ukraine, and she loved her city until this happened. Let me read her words to you. I remember the fear and anxiety that penetrated through my veins when I woke up on the brisk morning of February 24th, 2022. I immediately knew I had to leave. The journey was physically draining, but it was the mental exhaustion that really took a toll on me. For the duration of the drive, I felt like I was desperately running away from something that was just behind my back, getting closer and closer as each second passed. When I arrived in Uzhhorod, I finally felt safe, albeit only temporarily. This feeling quickly faded as alarms signaled that danger had reached there as well. That's when I decided I needed to escape Ukraine and the constant nervousness that consumed me. Can you hear that tension she felt as the war began? The terror. Happily, she's now in the UK, but she's still not home. She is a refugee. And she is just one example amongst many all over the world, and we find experiences similar to Alexandra's in the Bible as well. And in fact, her experience is similar to the psalmist when he writes in Psalm 120. The psalmist has described something similar. Here's some of his words from Psalm 120. You can flick back there if you want to. Woe to me that I dwell in Meshech, that I live among the tents of Kedar. Too long have I lived among those who hate peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. This Israelite is longing for a place of peace. The refugee is longing for a place of peace. And even we today, God's elect exiles in this world, we long for a place of peace and security and goodness. A place that we can call home. And that is what this psalm is all about. But before we get into the text, we ought to note a few things about this psalm. It was written by David, and the people of Israel at the time that David was writing this psalm, they were a warlike people. They were constantly fighting battles with the Philistines and with other enemies without, and they were constantly having struggles and fighting within as well. Even during David's own reign, we read about the tribes fighting against each other and David being kicked off his throne. But despite all of the war, the people of Israel have these great promises that they're holding on to. The promise God gave them that they would have a land, that they would be a great people, and that they would be blessed. And the center of all that blessing and all that goodness is on the place where God's name dwells. The Mount Zion, Jerusalem. At the time David is writing, the house of the Lord, the temple, has not yet been built, but God has already chosen Jerusalem to be his holy hill. And this warlike people, this people longing for goodness and blessing, the center point was Jerusalem, and they would ascend up there. They would ascend up to the mountain, the place of God's blessing. And that's what this psalm is all about. Going up from Meshech and Kedar, the places of war, up towards God's holy hill, and a place of blessing and security and safety. And the first thing that we see in this psalm is that the journey to Jerusalem is a glad journey. And it's a communal journey. It's a joyful, communal journey up to the house of the Lord. So let's read verses 1 and 2 together. I rejoiced with those who said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. Our feet are standing in your gates, O Jerusalem. So let's jump into the shoes of an Israelite for just a second and imagine ourselves a farmer or a shepherd in Israel. And we're standing there and our companions come up to us and say, let's go up to the house of the Lord. How does the Israelite feel about this invitation? He feels glad. He rejoices with his companions. This isn't one of those requests that you get that you feel like you kind of have to do, but you really don't want to do. like being asked when you're a teenager to go on holiday with your family, to go on the walking holiday that you never really want to go on, but you kind of have to. You're dragged along. That is not the psalmist's experience here. This is the boy who wakes up on his birthday and he rushes downstairs and he says, "Mum and Dad, where's my present? Where's my present? It's my birthday." And they say to him, "Well, just come outside with us and you'll find your present." And it's not a hardship for that boy to go outside, to make the journey from the kitchen to the garden. He gives a squeal of excitement, he holds his mum and dad's hands, and he walks out the door to find his present. And that is how the psalmist is feeling here. They say to him, "Let's go up to the house of the Lord." And he says, "Yes, let's go." He is delighted. Let's go up together to the house of the Lord. Now, I wonder for you how you felt about coming to church this morning. Did you feel this sense of delight to come to church? Maybe you did, but I imagine for lots of you, you didn't feel that level of delight. And certainly, speaking for myself, I personally don't feel like that when I come to church. So why does the psalmist feel this way? He feels delight because Jerusalem is delightful. The journey for the little boy from the kitchen to the garden is a good, delightful journey because he knows his bike is outside, his present is outside. There's a reward for him at the end of the journey, and that makes the journey delightful. And that is what the psalmist is saying here. There is a reward at the end of the journey. Jerusalem is delightful. And so the journey itself becomes a delight. Have a look with me at verses 3 to 5, where the psalmist talks about Jerusalem, and he explains what is so good and what is so delightful about it. And we'll see that Jerusalem is united about the thrones. Verses 3 to 5. A city united around the thrones. Jerusalem is built like a city that is closely compacted together. That is where the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, to praise the name of the Lord according to the statute given to Israel. There, the thrones for judgment stand, the thrones of the house of David. This city is compacted together. It's built together. Not primarily because the walls are well built and the towers are well built, although that is true, but because this is where the tribes of Israel come up together. This is a city of unity for all the people of Israel. 12 tribes, often at war, even during King David's time, united in one city. United in grateful praise of God. But why is that possible? What makes unity possible in this city? It's the thrones of judgment that stand there. The thrones of the house of David. This city is united. The tribes are all united because there is one king who sits enthroned. And this is the king who dispenses justice. If you've seen the Lion King films, you'll know that after Mufasa dies, Simba goes into exile, and the hyenas and Scar come into the Pride Lands, and everything begins to burn up, and it's dry, and there's no food for anyone. But then Simba, the king, returns, and he casts out Scar, and he throws out all the hyenas, and the rain begins to fall, and the king, King Simba, stands on Pride Rock and looks out at his kingdom. And you know that everything is going to be okay because the king is back on his throne. And that is a little picture of what this psalm is talking about. When the king sits upon his throne, all the darkness will be cast out. All those who seek after war will be cast out. All those with lying tongues will have their lying tongues stilled. And the 12 tribes that are constantly at war and conflict with each other, well, they will be united. Because when they have a disagreement, they will go up to this king, and this king will decide between them. And this king knows good from evil. God has anointed his king to sit enthroned in Jerusalem. And that is why the psalmist is delighted to go up. He knows he's not going to be assaulted when he walks through the gates. He knows he won't be wrongly imprisoned. He knows he won't be extorted within the city. He knows that if he goes to court, his His case will be upheld if he is in the right, because there is a king sitting on the throne. And this king doesn't just talk a good talk, as many politicians do. This king really administers justice. And because of that, Jerusalem is a city of peace. I'm aware, though, that this description may not make you feel very excited this morning. It doesn't make me feel really excited this morning. And I was asking myself as I was preparing, why is that? Why doesn't that make us feel very excited? And I think it's because, in many ways, we live in a society like this. The UK is not perfect, is it? But it is a society where we feel a level of safety. There's a rule of law. There's a police force who enforce that rule of law. There are judges who convict and acquit. But should we place ourselves in the footsteps of an Israelite in Psalm 120, surrounded by those who make war, surrounded by those who lie, then we feel the goodness of justice. Should we put ourselves in the footsteps of Alexandra, running from Ukraine and the war that tore her life apart, then we see how good and precious justice and peace is. And if we scratch a little deeper, we realize that even here in London, we lack a sense of security and peace. When we go outside, we lock our doors, don't we, so that people can't go in and steal our things. There are certain parts of London that you avoid, especially late at night. And how safe do we feel when we pick up a newspaper on Sunday morning and read about the war with Iran and Israel and how the US is now getting involved? Wars that are far away but could spill over into something worse. Or if we think about security in work, can we stand in our office and say what is true about God and about heaven and salvation and hell without fear? Can we speak those words truly? True words without risk of losing our job or being ostracized? For most of us, no, we cannot. Do we feel secure that we are loved and accepted no matter how we look or what our interests are? Or do we feel a deep sense of insecurity because we might be mocked or excluded because of who we spend our time with or what we do or because we go to church? We have Netflix at our fingers and phones that have artificial intelligence on them, but do we live a good life? Are we happy? Do we come back after a day at work and say, oh, that was good. I'm just full up and satisfied on goodness? Or do we say, that was exhausting and even the time I spent on my phone was miserable and I didn't enjoy it? We are blessed in this country to feel a degree of safety and peace and goodness. But the truth is that none of us feel truly safe. None of us feel truly at peace. None of us feel truly surrounded by goodness and full up with delight. So then the question is, was this psalm ever really a reality? Or was it just a nice dream? Well, let's look at the history first. Did this happen in Israel's history? Well, certainly for a short time, something like this happened during the reign of King Solomon. Listen to this from 1 Kings 10. The Queen of Sheba visits Solomon after he's built the temple, and this is what she says. And as I read it, I want you to listen out and see if there's any descriptions here which sound similar or resonate with what we've read in our Psalm 122. So this is what the Queen of Sheba says. The report was true that I heard in my own land of your words and of your wisdom, but I did not believe the reports until I came and my own eyes had seen it. And behold, the half was not told me. Your wisdom and prosperity surpass the report that I heard. Happy are your men. Happy are your servants who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and set you on the throne of Israel. Because the Lord loved Israel forever, he has made you king, that you may execute justice and righteousness. So you see there, the Queen of Sheba, she recognizes that the peace and the goodness that this psalm is talking about is there in Solomon's day. They were happy and they were blessed because David's son sat on David's throne, and he reigned in justice and goodness and prosperity and security. But sadly, that kingdom, as we know, didn't last for very long, did it? Solomon died, and after that, the kingdom fractured, and the Israelites were eventually taken off into exile. The days of the physical Israel and the physical Jerusalem, as the place that this psalm is talking about, were finished. And if we skip forward a little bit in the history to the time of Jesus, we read this fascinating little insight from Luke 19. As Jesus ascends to the hill of the Lord, he goes up to Jerusalem and he looks out at Jerusalem. And what does he say? He doesn't say the words of Psalm 122, the Song of Ascent. He doesn't say, I was glad. No, quite the opposite. Luke 19, verses 41 to 42. And when he drew near and saw the city, he wept over it, saying, would that you, even you, had known on this day the things that make for peace. But now they are hidden from your eyes. Jesus is saying, Jerusalem, you could have had peace if you had opened wide your doors and welcomed me in. But instead of putting their king on a throne in the center of a city, they put him on a cross outside of the city. And so Jesus wasn't glad when he saw the physical Jerusalem. The city that was meant to be a place of peace had become a place of death instead. But that doesn't mean the story's over, because Jesus inaugurates a new Jerusalem for us, doesn't he? A heavenly Jerusalem. In Revelation 21, again, listen out for things and themes from our psalm as I read this to you. Revelation 21, we read this. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. He who was seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. Isn't that a glorious place to be going, brothers and sisters? We are pilgrims on our way up to Jerusalem, the heavenly city, the city of peace, of shalom, of goodness and security. A place where there will be no more tears, and we will never be frightened again or anxious again. No sin will ever enter that place. No one else will sin against us, and we will sin against no one else. One commentator wrote this: upon the Davidic throne of justice, King Jesus will sit, and we want no one else there. He will decide matters of justice and punishment, mercy and pardon. The hope of justice will be realized when he reigns. Brothers and sisters, are you glad to be going there? It's easy, isn't it, to get comfortable here in this world and to forget that we're going to a better one. That's part of the reason that we need each other, to remind ourselves not to get so comfy here that we don't want to go home. No, we are refugees ascending towards the heavenly Jerusalem. And as we do that, we do it in joyful community. We do it together. And as we journey, we pray and we seek. Have a look with me at verses 6 to 9. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May those who love you be secure. May there be peace within your walls and security within your citadels. For the sake of my brothers and friends, I will say, peace be with you. For the sake of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek your prosperity. So, the psalmist has arrived in Jerusalem here, and he's seen how good and wonderful it is. And now he prays for the peace of Jerusalem to continue. He prays Jerusalem will be blessed and will be prosperous. Because the psalmist knows that if Jerusalem is blessed, then so will the tribes of the Lord. Everyone who takes refuge there will be blessed. If you're on a boat and you're traveling to America, then you probably don't pray that the boat will sink and pray that the captain will fall ill and that the crew will all get sick. That's not what you pray, is it, if you're on a boat to America? You pray that the boat will travel safely. You pray for the captain. You pray for the crew. Because that boat is taking you somewhere. And the church is the place, is the vehicle Christians are traveling towards that new Jerusalem in. We travel together, don't we? The church is the place where God's presence dwells with us, where people from every tribe and nation are gathered together, and we set our eyes on the throne of Jesus. He is seated in heaven. We set our eyes together on him, and we journey together towards him. The church is the vehicle of God's blessing in the world. And in the church, God has given us the riches of his word and the power of his Spirit. Glance through the psalm with me and have a look at the number of times that community is mentioned in this psalm. So verse 1, we get, those who said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. And then verse 2, our feet. And then verse 4, the tribes of the Lord go up. Verse 6, those who love you. Verse 8, my brothers and friends. The psalm is dripping with community. And friends, we can't do our Christian journey to heaven alone. We need each other to begin the journey. We need each other to continue the journey. And we need each other to make it to the end. Being a Christian is about being in the church community, the community of God, as we travel joyfully together towards the heavenly Jerusalem. And God, in his kindness, has already given us so many things within the church community that this psalm talks about. We already have peace between ourselves and God. We already have peace between ourselves and one another, one through the blood of Jesus. We already have access to God through his Spirit living in our hearts. We already have the security that our souls and our lives are safe with God in Christ Jesus in heaven, and that can never be stripped away from us. We already have leaders to judge what is good and right in our church with the wisdom that God has given them. So, brothers and sisters, pray for the church. Seek the good of the church. Because if we are a healthy and mature church, everyone in the church community will be blessed. And everyone in Woodford will be blessed for that matter. But secondly, don't panic when things go wrong in church, because they sometimes do. And you'll have heard about things going wrong, and you'll have seen things go wrong in churches. When leaders abuse their authority, or when there are divisions in churches and it fractures. When coming to church doesn't feel like a place of peace and security or goodness. It feels like a burden instead sometimes. Now, those things are terrible things, and we should mourn them. But they shouldn't knock our hope in the heavenly Jerusalem. We expect those things to happen sometimes, don't we? Because we're a bunch of sinners in a room together, and we will get things wrong sometimes. But that doesn't mean that the heavenly Jerusalem will not be like this psalm. Jesus is not yet reigning and seated amongst us. But one day he will be, friends. One day he will be. Imagine for a moment that we could tell Alexandra, the refugee I mentioned at the start, that she could have her home back. That she could return to Kiev and everything would be rebuilt and all her family and friends would be there. and there would never be war again. Well, friends, no one can promise that to Alexandra, can we? But Jesus has promised us this. One day, the promise of this psalm will be realized completely and fully. And our feet will be standing in the gates of Jerusalem. And there will be peace, and there will be goodness, and there will be security. Because Jesus will be on the throne. Jesus tells his disciples in John 14, I am going to prepare a place for you. And Jesus doesn't do any work in vain. If he has prepared a place for us, that means we will be there one day. That is where we are going. That is the thought that gladdens our hearts and that keeps us going on this pilgrimage. So as I finish, can I invite you, friends, let us go up, let us continue to go up to the house of the Lord together.